Wow, I think it was a mix of both. I was really lucky in that the math teacher at my high school also taught a computer science class. So in my senior year, I got to do a little bit of programming that I really hadn't done much of since that summer.
In this episode of KNN, I had the pleasure of speaking with Will Ramey. Will is a senior director at NVIDIA, where he leads global teams responsible for the NVIDIA Developer Program and the Deep Learning Institute. Since joining the company in 2003, he served in several technical and leadership roles, including several as the first product manager for CUDA and NVIDIA's developer tools. Prior to joining NVIDIA, he managed an independent game studio and developed advanced technology for the entertainment industry as a product manager and software engineer. He holds a degree in computer science from Willamette University and completed the Japan Studies program at Tokyo International University. Outside of work, Will enjoys playing piano, learning Spanish, and open water swimming. Follow him at @WRamey on Twitter to keep up with him online. You'll see a graphic with that below his picture in the actual video with us as well. Will and his team are responsible for the Deep Learning Institute credits that I've been giving away as part of my leaderboard and the 66 Days of Data community. A very special thank you to them to help further the learning of this community.
Will, thank you so much for coming in. We've had some pretty incredible talks, and I'm really impressed with all the things you're doing with the developer program at NVIDIA. So thanks again for coming in, and I'd love to be able to share your story and your experiences with my audience here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Well, so why don't we just jump right in? I want to learn, everything about you here in your career. Well, not too much, but how did you first get interested in technology and software engineering and in this space? Was there like one pivotal moment where you're like, aha, I'm interested in this, or was it a slow progression over time?
Wow. It was pretty gradual, and I think it started when I was pretty young. My parents, especially my mother, she really encouraged us to kind of develop a sense of curiosity and observation skills. She was always asking us why and how questions. And if we asked her questions, she'd turn it around and ask us questions instead of giving us answers. And I think that was a really great, experience, especially as a young child, when you're just trying to figure out what is the world and how do these things work. I had a lot of free time, also known as the gift of boredom, when I was young. And I used a lot of that time just to build things, just wooden blocks and Legos and erector sets and things like that. But maybe even more importantly, that free time and sense of curiosity led to me taking things apart. I really wanted to know how things work. And one of the toys that I had that I still remember was this transparent plastic clock. And you could see all the gears inside. And it came with this little screwdriver you could use to take it apart. And I don't know if I ever managed to get it, fully functioning and back together. But my mom likes to tell this story that one day she came up into her bedroom and her alarm clock was unplugged and all the pieces were on the floor. And that also never quite made it back together. And that was just the beginning of me, taking things apart and trying to figure out how they work, vacuum cleaners and stuff like that. And eventually, in the summer before fourth grade, my brother and I don't think we had any choice in the matter, but my brother and I were signed up for a computer class at the local public library, where we learned some basic and a little bit of logo to draw pictures on computers. And I just thought that was so cool that you could, tell the computer to do stuff and it would create pictures, or we made, like in basic, we made choose your own adventure stories. So depending on what the user typed in, and you could hide all sorts of really cool Easter eggs and funny creative ideas in little games like that. So that was really where I think I got my first taste of being interested in first physical technology and then digital technologies.
Awesome. Well, something that resonated with me was first the questions, and second, taking things apart. I explicitly remember, I think I was 8 or 9, and my mom used to love those disposable cameras. you'd like wind them up, you take all the pictures, you take them into CVS, and
Yes.
And I took one apart, and I was poking it with something. I poked the battery, and I just shocked the crap out of myself. And I distinctly remember I was like, "Oh, what was that? What did I just do?" And like a normal kid would never touch it again. But then I took a couple more of them apart, and I got to understand the mechanisms. And it's I think part of what makes someone effective as a data scientist, a software engineer, is that curiosity and also the willingness to get your hands dirty like that, right? And to realize that you might not be able to put it back together, but that's not the end of the world, right? You still gain something. You learned how these things work, or you shape this model of the world. And that's probably sometimes even more worthwhile than having a product that works after you've disassembled it.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to break a few things. Success comes in many different forms, and sometimes you have to break a few things to learn how they work, and then use that experience to build something even better.
Yeah, well, to that point, I don't think I've ever had a data science or software engineering project that I didn't break something during. So it comes with the territory. So just, would you mind giving me a little bit about your perhaps educational background, just what that looked like and how that set you up for your career at NVIDIA or some of the other things that you've done? And did you find that to be a pivotal part of your life, or is that something that you're like, I went to school, it was good, but I learned everything else outside of school?
Wow, I think it was a mix of both. I was really lucky in that the math teacher at my high school also taught a computer science class. So in my senior year, I got to do a little bit of programming that I really hadn't done much of since that summer at the public library. And I enjoyed it. It was kind of like math, but for a lot of people, when you're learning math, you don't really know why you're learning it. How am I going to use this in the future? Sure, I can understand maybe the arithmetic part is helpful, and it's nice to be able to estimate how much tax or tip I should pay on something. But really, the computer science exposure helped me to start understanding algorithms and sequences of events, and how you didn't always have to do everything from scratch, but you could build on top of the work that others had done and packaged up as libraries or frameworks and things like that. And so I think that was a really formative experience for me. The other thing that turns out to have enabled some other transitions in my career was that I was an exchange student to Japan for 1 year in high school. And that was just an amazing experience. In fact, I'm still in touch with some of my host families and host brothers and sisters. And now I guess you'd call them host nieces and nephews, since we're all, old and have kids. And that was just a fantastic formative experience for me that both of those things opened doors later on.
That's awesome. I think that just learning different cultures and seeing and just trying different things, different environments, that's part of everyone's personal growth process. And I've had quite a few people that I've interviewed where they've worked in different countries. Someone who I just interviewed, she worked in Spain after not knowing Spanish in the US, like going to college here. She picked up and went and is working at, I think it's Google over there. And the amount that you learn about yourself when you're introduced to another culture or your beliefs or whatever that is, or what you want in life, it's beyond the scope of anything that you can learn with your current like local surroundings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I still haven't done that, but
well, you learn so much about the culture in which you are immersed, but you also learn about your own blind spots and biases. When I went to Japan, I'm about 6'2", 6'3" after a good night's sleep, and I had braces. And there were just like the cutest little old Japanese ladies in the market who had never seen someone with braces, let alone someone that was 6'3". And so, they'd reach up and they'd want to touch my braces just to see, what is this? They're like, oh no, that's okay. Daijoubu desu. I'd be polite, but didn't need fingers in my mouth. But we take so many things kind of for granted, and spending time around people who have come from a different background really helped to open my eyes.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine around that time too, the technology in Japan was probably a little different than it was in the US.
Oh man, yeah, that was just around the time before Game Boy went international. We had heard of what that was, and one of the big exciting things for me was I got one of the first Game Boys. It was this brick of a device that had its own screen built in, and you could carry it with you and run on battery powers, and now you could play video games in the car and on the bus on the way to school. It was great.
I remember my cousin had one of those, and he would carry like 10 AA batteries with him because it was so inefficient. And it went through batteries in like 2 hours. And that really brings me back.
I remember one year for Christmas, my brother and I, we asked for batteries. That was actually on our Christmas list to power these game systems. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And so let's jump just a little bit more into your career here. So, correct me if I'm wrong, you started as basically a software engineer.
Yep.
Now you're leading teams.
Right.
What was that transition like? And when did you decide that you didn't want to just be an individual contributor, that you did want to have, I guess, leading teams is a very interpersonal kind of position. How did that transition take place?
In a pretty roundabout sort of way. And it wasn't an immediate, like, become a manager, suddenly be a leader type of experience. I think some people have that experience, but I think my path was, or my experience with that part was a little bit more common in that first you need to demonstrate some technical leadership skills. And as you take on responsibility for bigger and bigger projects, the kind of the art and the science of project management and program management also gave me the opportunity to learn and practice some of the softer people skills of, influencing others without having direct influence or kind of reporting structure and things like that. And I think that people who master those skills in situations where they don't have formal authority often turn out to be better people managers, better leaders over time, because then they don't rely on that sort of formal organizational authority as much as the softer skills of, listening and understanding and aligning on goals and priorities and things like that.
Awesome. And so, as you made that transition, what do you think was the most important thing for you to learn, the most valuable asset that you accumulated through that path to be successful at your role now?
I think it happens in a couple phases, right? When I first became a manager, or first was promoted to a role with management responsibilities, it was really around coordinating the work of others to accomplish projects that were bigger than any one of us could accomplish on our own. But as the team grew and some of our individual team members developed and practiced the skills of leading larger projects and became kind of team leads, then my responsibility shifted to providing more leadership, more thinking work, and a little bit less doing work. And so now in my role of leading teams of teams, I'm much more conscious about when I'm in the mode of thinking about what work needs to be done and why should we do this and where are our opportunities and challenges and things like that. And thinking about assessing the skills of the people on our teams, capabilities versus complexities of tasks and things like that, then with that as one mode. And then there's another mode where it's roll up your sleeves and jump in and do some problem solving, which involves relying on a lot of the technical experience and training that I've had over the years. And one of the interesting things about NVIDIA is that our leaders are expected to be good at both. You know, there are some companies where you'll have people who are, expected to be spending all of their time on strategy or design, and they have other people whose job it is to work on implementation and operationalization and things like that. But at NVIDIA, and I'm sure there are other companies like us in this regard, that's something that all of our leaders are expected to be good at both the thinking work and the doing work.
I love that. I think that's a very good practice. You know, I've had friends, or I've worked at companies where, you know, reporting to a data science manager who has never done data science before. And, you know, they've just been commissioned to build out this team, and they don't understand what pipelines are or anything like that. And it's hard to get work done if that is the case.
Yeah, I think that's got to be hard for both the manager and the team, because you could have someone who's a really great person, but it's difficult to, be the helpful and empathetic leader that you need to be if you haven't at least walked a couple miles in your team's shoes.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes that person's job a lot harder because they're trying to probably learn a lot of the things as they go, and that's detracting from the time they can spend with their team and a lot of these other things. But just to recap, so from what it sounded like, the first thing that was really effective when you first got into that kind of manager level was the organizational ability to really, like task manage, hand on the ground. And then as you progressed, it was kind of strategic thinking, but your knowledge of existing, like of the work that your people are actually doing, that made you kind of advance in that role and be able to really create value for NVIDIA. Am I summarizing that effectively?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, the logic of that, having lived through it myself, just really makes sense. How else, and maybe other people have found ways to do this, but how can you possibly form a good strategy around how to approach solving a problem or tackling a particular opportunity if you don't have kind of personally the good hands-on tactical experience with the tools and techniques and an understanding of the limitations of those things? It's possible to do that, I suppose, with a whole team of people. And I don't want to make it sound like I just sit off in an ivory tower and think strategic thoughts all day. That's not the case at all.
Well, that's what I do. So,
when we work on strategy, it's almost always a teamwork exercise, right? We want to pull in the subject matter experts who can help guide the thinking and participate in helping us decide how we're going to go solve some of the most challenging problems. But I think it's really important that the person in a leadership role is more than just a facilitator of that conversation.
Awesome. And I love that. I think that, something that you've shown through your career is that what makes you effective at each stage can be a little bit different. A lot of people think that there's some silver bullet that, if I do this throughout my whole career, that's going to take me really far. But one, it really depends on what you're going to do, and you have to match the skill set or the attribute to the type of work that you're doing at the time.
Right.
Thinking
one of the difficult things about those transitions is, you'd think I would have learned it by now, but at pretty much every transition, there's this like smack on the head moment when you realize the set of skills and the way you've been doing things that helped you get recognized as being really good and get promoted to a larger scope of responsibility or a higher level within the organization. Those are not the things that are going to help you be great at that next level. And so thinking about your career as, I use this metaphor of wearing a tool belt, right? Every day I'm practicing using my tools, I'm learning new tools, and I'm looking for new types of tools, whether they're hard skills and technical skills or deeper understanding of how things work, or whether there's some of the softer skills around engaging and active listening and including more people, more perspectives, inviting diversity of perspectives into the discussion. Those are things that, when you're an engineer or a data scientist and you're trying to solve a problem that's right in front of you, you need to choose one way to go solve that problem. And your results are often pretty, objectively successful or not. You have a debugger, you have a performance specification you're trying to hit or something like that. But as you take on a larger scope of responsibilities, and that includes the leadership of people, right? There really isn't any leadership of technology. You can lead people who are innovating and creating technology, but in a leadership role, you're talking about the people now, and that it just requires a different set of approaches.
Well, in my day job where we're doing consulting for quite a few companies, that's one of the biggest challenges that I see almost every day, is that someone is leading a team because they did great individual contributor work and they got promoted, and then they don't want to be leading a team. They love doing their individual contributor work, but it made logical sense to promote this person because they're doing such great stuff. And I think that's something that we can all learn, is that the end goal doesn't have to be leadership. It can be. I mean, I like working with people. I like thinking strategically, probably more than I like individual contributor stuff. But there's plenty of people where like individual contributor work, like you can just keep doing it if it's what you do and it's what you enjoy. There's no point in trying to manage a team if you're not going to enjoy doing that.
Exactly.
And yeah,
I think one of the, go ahead.
No, all you.
I was going to say, I think that, one of the really important things for people to be comfortable with and hopefully expect as they go through these transitions is that there are going to be times when you are not a great manager. There were times when I was not a great manager, and I got that smacked upside the head moment when I realized I needed to go work on developing some new tools. I needed some different tools in my tool belt to effectively lead my team through a different set of a different situation or a different set of goals, or even just a different set of people sometimes. And, even today, I think it's really important to acknowledge that greatness is not necessarily a state of being. It's a continuous process that you always need to be looking and learning. One of the things that I like most about working at NVIDIA is I'm surrounded by incredibly smart people, and I have the opportunity to learn something new every single day. And whether that's from some of our engineers or solution architects or curriculum developers, or whether that's from my HR business partner, talking through, how do we help our team? How do we better support our teams as they deal with all this working from home? And, we can be on Zoom all day, but that's not quite the same as being able to just sit down and have lunch with a group of colleagues at the office.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really important. Obviously, you guys at NVIDIA have been awesome with me. And I can see that bleeding through in every conversation I have. I don't think I've talked to anyone from NVIDIA that wasn't absolutely gushing about working there, which I think is pretty special. I've talked with a lot of people from a lot of different companies, and you don't hear that quite as often as you'd expect. I think it'd be useful for everyone listening. Would you mind just kind of giving a high level overview of the type of work that you do at NVIDIA, what you're responsible for, and then we can kind of talk about some of the specifics of that and why it's so relevant, especially for the data science audience as well.
Sure. Yeah. So technically, I think my title, we don't put a lot of stock in titles. Technically, I think my title is like Senior Director of Developer Marketing. But I tend not to use that very often because it's got marketing at the end of it. And as I used to be an engineer, a practicing software programmer, and working with developers. There are a lot of people who are allergic to this idea of marketing with a capital M, because it's just sort of maybe feels a little bit uncomfortable. And so I think of marketing with a lowercase m, and the way that my team and I approach our developer programs and supporting our developer ecosystem is really one of challenging ourselves to be as helpful as possible to developers, engineers, researchers, data scientists, IT professionals, and so forth, who, they have great ideas, or they have really challenging problems they're trying to solve. And if we can help connect them with the SDKs, the frameworks, the APIs, the training or documentation or other information that they need in order to be successful in their work, then that's our mission, that's our purpose. And you could call that marketing, or you could call it evangelism, but really we just think about it as being helpful.
I love that. I cringe a little bit every time I hear someone with evangelist in the title. I've got a couple of friends that are like a tech evangelist at XYZ company. Honestly, it sounds pretty cool, but I'm always like, what is that?
Job.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, being a technology evangelist is a really cool job, and the evangelists who I know are great, fun, engaging, really knowledgeable people. But I agree, there is a little bit of a connotation to the label that sometimes goes with those roles. So I think it's just like don't judge a book by the cover.
Exactly.
Look past the title and actually engage with the person to understand what they're about.
So I'd love to hear more about the developer community specifically. What are the types of resources you're providing? Obviously, you have some awesome courses. What else is out there for people to learn? What have you found to be, what do you think the most useful service that you guys provide is?
The most useful service?
That's like choosing favorite children, I know, so you don't have to answer that one. But
so, one of the really important things that I think we've learned about the ecosystem of people who take advantage of the technologies coming from NVIDIA is that there's almost no single person who cares about all of it. It used to be, I joined the company 17 years ago, that there was really kind of two groups of people. There was people who were, at least on the development side, right? There were people who were developing games, and there were people who were developing what we called professional visualization applications. And they wanted code samples and APIs and some documentation and research into how to do cool new things. But over the last almost 2 decades, the breadth of different audiences that NVIDIA now reaches. You might laugh, one of our biggest conferences of the year where we engage with the most people is RSNA, the Radiological Society of North America, right? It turns out though that medical imaging, right, somehow converting the data that is captured through CAT scans and MRIs and ultrasound into images that we can look at and understand what's going on inside of our bodies is tremendously computationally intensive. And we've been able to help the people, the organizations who build these machines to process that data fast enough that they can actually visualize it in real time and provide much faster diagnostic and treatment recommendations to their patients. And now with the AI revolution kind of kicking into full gear, using advanced data science techniques like deep learning to further analyze those images and three-dimensional volumetric reconstructions of the data that's collected from these medical instruments as diagnostic tools and as treatment recommendation and prediction systems is something that's just tremendously powerful. And that's just one of dozens and dozens of application domains where people are taking advantage of the frameworks we provide. So for example, in medical imaging, it's the Clara framework. But then if you go look into like 5G telephony, there's a different framework called Aerial. And so one of the things we have to be careful about is know who we're talking to, because it's not useful or helpful for NVIDIA to go explain our medical imaging software framework to people who are building 5G communication systems or vice versa. So having that sense of who is the audience and what kinds of problems, what are the application domains in which they're trying to build solutions, has become increasingly important over the years.
That's awesome. I think something that I've personally struggled with, even in like any content or education space, is I always build stuff that I think would be useful, or I try to tell the story that I would have liked to have had. But very often my story is different than other people's. And, sometimes a lot of people are on the same page, like, oh, I went through that. But a lot of time it's, me talking to an empty room because, my story might not be as relatable as I think it is. It's always like that individual personal bias. So I think it's awesome that you're taking a kind of consumer first approach and understanding like, hey, these are what the market wants for a lot of these things.
And we really have we have a lot of flexibility in how we approach these things, because from a developer programs perspective, our goal is to be as helpful as possible in connecting people with the resources that they need to solve their problems. So there's a whole bunch of people like you who they're scratching their own itch, right? They're building a solution that solves a problem for them or for people who they understand. And our job in that context is to provide them with the resources that they need, the technology and the know-how and so forth. But as NVIDIA, we also have a perspective on things that we would like to see in the world. And sometimes we scratch our own itch as well. And so one example of that is the new Omniverse program. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Omniverse is a collection of software that integrates dozens of other pieces of content creation and simulation and visualization software packages into a fully real-time ray traced visualization environment that has physically accurate, not only physically accurate lighting and sound, but physics for collision and destruction and things like that. And a virtual reality component that would allow, for example, let's say you have a mechanical engineer who's working on designing an airplane up in Seattle, and a interior designer who's working on the new seats that are going to go into that airplane. Well, historically, they all worked completely offline in like separate environments and maybe just exchanged files every once in a while. But with Omniverse, they can in real time be designing and visualizing and doing all the physical testing to make sure that not only all the bolts and screws go in the right places, but they can do mechanical testing to say like, hey, if this, airplane goes on a bumpy runway, are the seat back tables going to rattle free and fall in your lap, or are they going to stay in place? Things like that are just, really, really revolutionizing the workflows of a number of different industries across architecture, engineering, construction, and so forth.
Awesome. Well, that sounds really cool to me. I'm starting to get very interested in VR, not for gaming or anything like that, but for just like really mundane stuff. Like, for example, my dad is very involved in like special interest groups around oral surgery. And they have this huge meeting every year that nobody can go to. They have to do it over Zoom. Like, what if you did the whole thing with, in virtual reality, whatever that might be, because you still get that networking effect, or you still get some of the things that you're missing out on completely if you have a virtual environment. I think that there's so many opportunities. Obviously, your use case is a lot cooler, but even, you're thinking about just the very simple things with how the world has changed now. It's fascinating for what could be. And I love that you guys are introducing these types of solutions and being forward thinking about it. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I want to build, it comes from saying, like Stalgan 2, I forget what the newest version of it. It's like, wow, I can train this on a lot less data. This is incredible. If I wanted to generate something, if I wanted to have some fun with that, the ideas start coming once you have the technology and you know what it's capable of. So I am really excited about what's to come and to learn more about these things, which you guys are obviously offering. What is your best mechanism for getting feedback on these programs?
Well, so there's well over 2 million members in our global developer program, plus more participating in some of our smaller programs. And we do send surveys, usually just kind of statistical sampling to get some directional feedback. And we do get a fair amount of direct feedback from people, both through our forums and through the bug filing interfaces and things like that. When we occasionally mess something up, we hear about it pretty quickly and pretty loudly. But we're always looking for feedback. One example is that, so in our Deep Learning Institute training courses, every course has an integrated feedback survey. And the team of curriculum designers and instructors gets together every week to review all of the feedback from the preceding week. And we're looking for things like, how can we do a better job of helping people prepare for the courses before they get started? How can we provide better information and materials to our instructors so that they're better prepared to deliver a more engaging learning experience and answer some of the more commonly asked questions? How can we recognize the best instructors, right? It feels great when we see a particular instructor getting kind of over the top feedback to, send them an email and a recognition saying, wow, you did a great job. And share with them the positive feedback that's coming back from their students. So yeah, I think we take feedback pretty seriously. A lot of times there are good ideas that are for one reason or another complicated or difficult for us to do. But we tend to look at the world as being full of lots of really good ideas. And our constraint is really just on, time and people, sometimes money, resources, because we can only do so much at a time. And there's just so much cool new stuff coming down the pipeline that we have to get ready for that sometimes we can't engage on all of the good ideas that are coming in on the things we've already done.
That's part of the game, right?
Balancing act, yeah.
Exactly. So an extremely selfish question as someone who's created a course, what does your course creation process look like? What does the research look like? What do the instructors look like? Where are you sourcing them from, etc.?
It's evolved a lot over the years. So we have a team of, we call content developers and curriculum designers who really focus on building kind of hands-on project-based learning experiences. One of the big differences about our training initiative is that although we have training in a number of different formats, really the core of the learning experience is based around hands-on learning. And to make this easier, we did some early tests where we said, hey, we'll develop some curriculum and you can download it and do it on your own computers. And then we interviewed people and we found out that they ran into all kinds of problems. Software configuration, or didn't have a GPU yet, or, just all sorts of problems. And so in the early days, what we used to do is my friend Mark and I, we had a pallet, like, a wooden pallet stacked high with laptops. Now we would travel all over the world putting on, customer trainings, helping people learn this new technology. But, getting laptops through customs and fixing the they get bashed in by forklifts and you can't find the guy who destroyed it. Or you have to re-image the hard drive every time after someone uses it because they might have left it in a state that it doesn't work for the next person. And just a whole bunch of reasons. Several years ago, when Amazon first put GPUs in their cloud, we realized we had the opportunity to solve that problem and more. And so we completely changed our strategy and our thinking to start building our training courses using fully configured GPU accelerated servers in the cloud. And that allowed us to reach more than just, a pallet full of people or a pallet full of laptops for people at a time, but we could train thousands and thousands of people when they wanted to get trained, not when we happened to show up, which we still do. But that self-paced online training has allowed our Deep Learning Institute to reach, I think it's over 250,000 people already, and connect the developers and data scientists and IT professionals with the hands-on experience that they need across deep learning, accelerated computing, data science, networking topics, and more.
That's awesome. Can you give me just like a kind of deep dive on the Deep Learning Institute, like when that came about? What's the, why that's obviously so important in this day and age,
Sure.
Specifically for my audience, obviously.
It's kind of a funny story, actually. A few years after we transitioned to offering courses in the cloud, this kind of curious technology called deep learning started showing up in the news, and we were hearing from people who were doing kind of interesting work with it. And so some of our engineers created just little, almost like toy exercises to play around with deep learning and help more people experience it. It was really kind of the outgrowth of their own curiosity and experimentation, and they decided to package it up in a way that we could share it with others. And in a very short amount of time, more people signed up and took those deep learning courses than the entire history of all of our other courses. And so we knew that we had a tiger by the tail, and we decided to double down, maybe triple down, and take what had been kind of a part-time volunteer effort putting together training content at that point into like an official formal team. And that's when we gave it the name, the Deep Learning Institute. There's been a lot of focus on deep learning over the years, and that is, the majority of the content in our course catalog. But we also have CUDA and accelerated computing, C++ training there. We also have Python and Rapids training courses. We have courses for networking and IT professionals. And so, internally at least, we kind of joke that the Deep Learning Institute is where you go to learn deeply about all of the GPU accelerated technologies available from NVIDIA. It's a little bit of mental gymnastics, but it helps us to continue to support the broad range of technologies in the way that people are using our platforms.
That's incredible. And with the new hardware that I got, I'm definitely going to be diving pretty deeply into those things as well. And, I do want to take this moment to note that you guys have been excellent in giving out quite a few DLI credits to my audience. And I'm going to link the video that's related to that above and below. So thank you guys again. And I'm so excited. I'm over the moon to be able to share this with the community.
Well, we're delighted to support people who want to learn more. I'm really interested in your monthly program of recognizing the top 5 participants in the ecosystem. I think the more we all participate and share, the better it is for all of us. This is not an environment of scarcity. It's an environment of plenty, and it's limited only by our own curiosity and decision to spend time on it.
Well, I've been finding that I learn a lot more from other people in fairly unexpected places than I think. You go on Stack Overflow, right? And you look at 4 or 5 of the comments and you're like, wow, I understand this way better than even I had hoped to begin with. It's like, I got my answer and I got why it makes sense and why it works. And it's like, well, community contribution, there's a tremendous beauty in that.
It's absolutely true. What We have a presence on Stack Overflow as well as NVIDIA's developer forums and a number of other places. And a funny story, several years ago and several platforms ago, our forums community got hacked. Somebody figured out how to get in there, and they were posting all sorts of advertisements for pharmaceuticals and crazy stuff that we were just, manually racing to get rid of and figure out an algorithm to keep them out. And for a period of about 3 months, we just decided to hit the pause button and shut it down. And we transferred all of our energy over to engaging with the community on Stack Overflow. And as part of that, one of our solution architects, I won't say his name, I don't want to embarrass him, I didn't ask for permission to tell his story, but he had kind of like played with CUDA and understood the concepts, but wasn't actually practicing. He was working on some other technologies, but he took up the call to help. And within those 3 months, he became the #1 contributor on Stack Overflow for CUDA and some related tags. And I was just so proud of that intent. He did it because it was helping him learn, and it was helping other people solve, real problems and build the applications that they wanted to build. But the side effect was that he got to pick up this amazing level of knowledge and to help engage very broadly across the community. And even still, some of his answers are the most highly rated awesome. Across all the Stack Overflow. So it's great that we see people going back and forth and referencing posts between these platforms.
That's incredible. I think it's also a little addictive too. Once you get started, you just kind of have to break the barrier, do it once or twice, and you're like, wow, like people like this. I'm helping people, and it creates that snowball effect.
Yeah, I think they've done a great job.
Excellent. That is kind of all my questions. Obviously, I think your story is fascinating. It's incredible hearing about the developer programs, the Deep Learning Institute. Are there any additional thoughts that you have? Any parting words of wisdom? Anything you'd like to share while you have the soapbox?
Soapbox. All right. I think there's really two things, right? For people who are looking to get started with any of the technologies that NVIDIA provides, I'd encourage you to check out our developer website, join our developer program, take a look at the training catalog. Keep in mind that the courses, some of the courses are available for free, but most of them we have to charge a little bit for to cover the cost of all of the cloud servers that are included in the course. So you don't have to spend your time setting up a server with all the right versions of software and compatibility issues and things like that. And you also don't have to spend a lot of time waiting to figure out you don't have to get an IT degree to figure out how to turn on servers in the cloud just for the purpose of taking a training course. I'd also encourage you to look at our GPU Technology Conference. This is something we started a little over 10 years ago. Actually, a friend, Victoria, and I started the very first GTC and went out and recruited a whole bunch of really cool researchers who were doing compelling work to come at the conference. And it's just grown into a global phenomenon since then. Hundreds and hundreds of people at NVIDIA work hard to put together the GPU technology conferences every year. And we do it all with developers in mind. We create Connect with Experts sessions and technology sessions and use case sessions and all sorts of training and opportunities to really come up to speed quickly. Attending the live events is the best way to learn. It's a really just concentrated dose, but we also make the archives available to members of our developer program. If you want to just check out all of the on-demand recordings and demos and more. Those are the resources that I'd recommend for everybody who's getting started.
Awesome. And Shannon actually gave me quite a few GTC conference passes this last time around to give away. And I watched quite a few of the lectures. They're very good. So I highly recommend those as well. I'll see if I can reach out to her to maybe give me a couple more of those when the next one comes around to give away as something maybe part of the leaderboard, whatever that might be. But Again, Will, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think people are going to get quite a bit out of it.
Thanks, Ken.